as we began to speak a little during our orientation yesterday, when we said, we are all born ignorant. We're born ignorant about everything, thank God. So we can sleep properly. As newborns, we can rest well. And this ignorance is something we shed as we grow. As we grow physically, growth in a human being or in any life form is not just considered to be physical growth. Growth is physical, growth is cognitive, growth is emotional. So these three components of growth exist in all life. But one difference between us and other life forms is, like if you look at an animal, the growth of an animal from birth to its adulthood is a growth required enough to live its animal life. Little bit we need to cut down, little bit more. For it to recognize the animal life means for it to recognize its species, So a tiger will mate a tiger and not a mule, It should recognize its species. It needs to recognize what it takes for me to become an adult. Physical adult, emotional adult. Hence, as long as those emotions need the nurturance of a mom, generally a mother, not so much a father in the animal world, and that too for a very defined time frame, that much awareness the animal world has. Whereas when you look at, so when it comes to food, sleep, right? Knowing right from left, certain cognitive skills, how to stand, how to walk, how to run, these are all very, very typical in all life. If you have ever had any pets, then you would have observed their own growth process. We recently had the privilege in pandemic when these wild cats, not the wild cats, the little cats, kittens and cats began to come into the ashram. And we ended up seeing a few births and deaths and whatnot, and the growth process. It's really fascinating. And you wonder when you see them, how different are we from them, in the growth process. The way the parenting happens and so on, it is simply a marvel to watch. Well, but when we look at a human being, so our growth is about becoming an adult, a physical adult, cognitive adult, emotional adult. But the question comes up whether these three processes move parallelly, equally in all human beings, We are fully aware physical adult is an independent process. Nature takes care of physical adult. You eat your food properly, see that you don't get knocked down by auto rickshaws and so on. You become a physical adult. But cognitive adult, it definitely needs a support system. For cognitive adulthood, it's not a natural process. Requires the educational system, requires education, requires teachers, requires at least 20-25 years of regular learning process to be able to know, to be able to postulate, to be able to deduct, to deduce, to abstract. These are all skills which we call cognitive skills, no? And emotional adulthood. What is emotional adulthood? Cognitively, we declare by the time a person reaches the age of 22, 22, 24, you have studied enough. In the Indian system, the day you get your degree, parents are ready for a bahu, for the next stage of life. Because it is said, anashrami na tishthet. It is said in our tradition that moving from one stage of life to the next, one should never be a trishanku in between, This bachelorhood or spinsterhood is not supported. And therefore, when you complete one phase, you enter into the next phase you keep the life must roll on. But this adulthood that we talk about, physically I'm an adult, cognitively okay, society has declared with the certificates I've received that I am cognitively quite equipped. But this emotional adulthood, how do we measure? What are the parameters of emotional adulthood, And emotional adulthood is said is a process. Is a process that goes on through life. Unlike the other two, even though learning goes on through life, cognitive skills, people keep studying, there are people who don't stop studying. But the emotional adulthood, if it has a good starting point with a stability at home front, where there has been emotional nurturance from the caretakers for that little helpless child who needed to grow up. When you need to grow, there is a need to take in, to absorb, so that I am nourished enough to grow. And there are times when in the receiving end, I am ready, but the givers are not quite ready. So sometimes you find in dysfunctional families and so on, where the caregivers are not necessarily as well equipped because of their own challenges. The child growing up can grow up with some challenges, emotional issues and chronic issues, chronic anger, so on and so forth, which takes then years to work through. Because in childhood cannot work through. I am still a receiver to become an adult. But then once I become an adult, then these gaps, these lacunas, these failings, I need to somewhere find ways and means to compensate so that I can live a functional, emotionally healthy life